Welcome back once again. Tonight's topic is what I'm going to call an abuse parallel. The reason for this is to hopefully allow you to listen to a specific scenario and look at it objectively. Because if you're thinking about your real situation and what you really went through, it's easy to get caught up in emotions and thoughts and trouble where you can't really ever assess it. So the point with this one is to take your situation and put it in a different framework and hopefully, again, see it objectively and realize exactly what's going on. Because if you're thinking about the real situation, you're going to get lost in the hall of mirrors, you're going to get lost in the quicksand and not ever understand. So here we go. It actually deals with the idealization phase into the devalue phase or stage. And what we'll use as our parallel universe topic is you're a kid. You live with mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy feeds you 3 meals a day, and they're like bird meals. There's not much to them, and you find yourself still hungry, so you ate candy and whatever else. Well, this goes on, and you're used to having slim pickings for your meals. Well, one day mommy or daddy says, "Hey, kid, Granny wants to see you this weekend. So you're going to be taken to Granny's house." So you think, okay, well then you go to Granny's house. And guess what happens when you go to Granny's house? Granny's got enough food for 10 meals per day. And it's all so beautiful and fresh and smells so good. So you didn't go to Granny's house expecting food, but when you showed up, she was like, "Okay, we've got 10 different full course meals to pick from. What do you want?" And you, as this kid, are like, "Wow," and you pick the 10 meals or whatever you want. Well, that's kind of the way it works with the narcissistic predator monster, because you're not asking for anything, but these people are like going overboard to give you and offer you these things. Kind of like if Granny knew that you were deprived of food, so she figured, well, you know what, I'm going to show that kid the way it could be. It's kind of the same principle. And I'll be switching back and forth between the two because they relate. But, but during that idealization phase with your narcopath or narcissist, it's the same type of thing where you're basically spoiled. You are given anything and everything you could ever want, even things you didn't even say you wanted. Well, with Granny, she's giving you all this great food that tastes so good, so you eat it. You have a great weekend, and then you go back home. Well, then mommy or daddy tells you, "Oh, Granny wants to have you over again next week." So you go again for another weekend, and same thing. Food, food, food. Gluttony, great food. And it's a pattern. So this same pattern repeats for several weeks in a row. So eventually you start to, in your brain, associate Granny's house means great food. So each time you go to Granny's house, you sometimes maybe even skip the meal at your own house just to leave room for the wonderful feast that Granny has. So you're just doing this on a regular basis. Well, imagine that after, let's say, 3 months of this, you show up at Granny's house and you're anxiously awaiting what kind of fancy dishes she'll have for you tonight, and she mysteriously doesn't mention any kind of food. So you finally get to the point where you're like, "Granny, I'm kind of hungry. What kind of food do you have?" And imagine Granny all of a sudden says, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. We're out of food. If you want something, you can go down the street to McDonald's." Well, to you, as this child, that is out of character with what you're used to. And we switch back to the narcissist. This person was caring for your every need, and all of a sudden, when you have a need that involves clarifying something that cluster B person did, all that concern is just gone. So you're like, Granny, I'm hungry. Where's the food? Well, imagine Granny saying, oh, so the only reason you come to see me is my food? Well, same thing with your narcissistic fuckface. They're going to be doing something very similar to that. And it blows your mind because you've been conditioned to believe that, okay, Granny's house means feast. Granny's house, because it's a pattern. But then all of a sudden, the pattern changes, and Granny did not bother to tell you, just like with your narcissist. If they suddenly switch gears, they're not going to turn to you like, say, honey, you can still come over each weekend for me, but I don't have any more food. So, if that's okay, that will not happen with these people. They'll be just like acting like everything's just perfectly normal, even though they've switched game plans, switched gears, and don't bother to tell you or warn you. And so you, as this little kid, is just like wondering, okay, for the last several months there's been great food, and now there isn't. And then you might even start to wonder, did I do something wrong to lose the access to that food? And again, this is all abuse. This is a subtle form of basically covert abuse. Because if the granny had any kind of empathy, if she had any kind of feeling or emotion, she would realize that, hey, I brought this kid over for the last several months, gave him a feast, and now I don't have one. I better bring him into it. No, they don't. With the narcissistic personality, blank face. So, gaslighting is a part of all this too, because if it's, let's just say you, the child, have grown up and you're having someone over, every time they come over, you give them a nice meal, a nice drink, a nice whatever, and then they come over after a few months and there's no food or drink, well, you would feel an obligation to say, I know you've come here all the time. I hope you're not just here for my drink and food, but I don't have any more. I hope that's okay. But these things don't happen when you're dealing with the cluster B monster race. Reptilian shapeshifters like Hillary Clinton and a few others. But anyway, hopefully, if you can look at this in an objective way, you can realize that you, being the child at Granny's, you're not being hateful, you're not being ungrateful, because remember, you never went to Granny's house to say, hey Granny, I'm here, give me some food. It's Granny gave you the food and conditioned you to accept or expect the food. So she does it repeatedly, and then all of a sudden it just stops, and you're like, oh, where's the food? And instead of giving you like a non-abusive / non-manipulative response, she's just doing her gaslight face of, oh, well, we're just out of food. I told you that. And you are looking at her face thinking there's something missing, but that's how each one works. Either the granny in this example or the narcissistic personality fool. They do this kind of stuff, which is designed, again, to throw you off balance. Because you know what you know, and you realize what you realize, that, okay, she's fed me every time, and now when I question her, she doesn't have a good answer. She's just saying, so you're just here for my food? Well, and that is just totally off base. But it fits right in with the narcopathic personality disordered monster. So think about this, and maybe you can crawl out of the mess that you thought you created when actually you didn't. Just like the kid might think, what did I do to deserve no food? It's nothing. It's the other person is unstable and retarded.